I recently reached out to my community and asked if anyone was willing to submit art for critique. I received some submissions and spent a lot of time with the work. Here are my thoughts. I'm not sure if you want me to use your name or use your YouTube, so I'm going to put your YouTube on the screen here. Boop.
Hey man, I just found your channel and subbed. I was wondering if you could give me some opinions and a way to improve my drawings. I just started out drawing a few years ago. I mostly draw people's cars and gift it to them like picture 1. For a bit of context, I'm 15 years old and I don't have much to work with, just some basic pencils and blank paper, and I don't like coloring my drawings. Right now any advice will be appreciated, thank you very much.
So I'm going to put all 3 of your drawings kind of like in sequence here. But I think that a lot of what I have to say can apply to all of them, so we'll just focus on this first one that you sent me. There's a couple instances here where I see a lack of line confidence, meaning there's like kind of a sketchy line that occurs like in the windshield here, parts of the bumper of the car, parts of the like wheel wells. When we're kids, we draw stuff like this, right? The main thing that makes these drawings good is the line confidence. Let me explain further. When we're little kids, we draw lines like this. Then at some point, whether it's because we see someone else draw a certain way or whatever, we start to draw lines like this. These sketchy, scribbly lines are no good. Instead of drawing these lines like this that are sort of insecure, you'll be better served drawing lines with confidence. Hold your utensil with a loose grip. That'll help you draw lighter and make it easier to erase. Pull lines using your shoulder and your elbow. Your wrist is probably the body part you want to use the least when you draw. Yeah, you'll use it for like little details here and there, but your big main lines should be drawn with your elbow and your shoulder. Another thing that will help you, and this is kind of hard to illustrate, so just take my word for it. Start practicing looking where you will draw, and you'll discover that it's much easier to draw, especially curved lines. If you keep your eyes trained right on the tip of your pencil, it makes it more difficult. But as you start to build up the muscle memory, and you look where you're going to draw, you'll draw much more confident straight lines. Second is to start viewing your composition as a series of basic 3-dimensional shapes. I kind of get a feeling when I look at your drawings that there isn't a lot of volume in the shapes here. Everything looks like it's sort of trying to be in perspective, but it's not really working. So what I recommend is, as you're starting to construct your scene, block out basic 3-dimensional shapes first. Start to look at your scene and observe where it can be built out of basic 3D shapes. So obviously you like to draw cars. Wheels are cylinders. Vintage cars have really awesome boxy construction. And if you use a very light grip on your pencil, you'll be able to draw light. You'll be able to erase and draw over these lines. As far as demos go, this could get a little long, so I'm not going to draw this whole truck. But I just want you to get into the habit of seeing a scene not as like a series of contour lines to draw, but a series of 3D shapes to render. And the next tip will aid you in that as well. You want to avoid scribbly wibbly. So if you look at like these trees, you look at some of the shadows, you look at like the hills in the background, no scribbly wibbly. That is no good. Even hatching, that just kind of is arbitrary. That's no good. Your hatching should follow the contour of the object you're drawing. So look here. See this? This was clearly drawn just like that, in one scribble without removing your pencil from the paper. Instead, make every stroke distinct and think about how your strokes contribute to the volumetric quality of the object you're drawing. You're drawing something that's 3D, and as you build up the shading, do it in 3D. And then for areas like these hills up here, don't just scribble things in. Make every stroke intentional. Pick up the pencil as you start to change directions. This next submission comes from J. Smith Kramer at Animal Croc.
Here are some cartoons that I painstakingly scrawled. I hope that this fits the bill of what you asked for. Here is my intention d'oeuvre. I was exposed to Crazy Cat at an early age, and that stands high as a semiotic standard in my mind. I want to make simple statements, although they may often come out as complex. The picture as self-representation serves a unique mission, in the words of Ernie Bushmiller, for gum chewers, not caviar eaters. My name is Jay. Tear me apart, brother.
Look, the more time I spent with this work, the more I grew to dislike it. I'll cycle through the images. I encourage the audience to pause and actually read the comics. I encourage you to do that for everyone's work on this channel. So the first piece I saw from you was a 2-panel comic. It says something along the lines of, hurt people, uncut toenails cut. It's kind of a sort of a picture of Drake. I can tell by the heart in the hair and the shirt that says Degrassi. You could have put more effort into capturing his likeness and giving his head the correct shape and things like that. But that's not really my problem. I could tell it was Drake, so that was successful. The second image, the punchline, you showed, sort of, but you mostly told. You could have drawn the punchline, like draw the long toenail cutting the foot. Without the lettering, I would have no idea what this was. When I first looked at your work, I had some fun sort of trying to read it, like trying to read through the kind of like overly verbose thing that you're doing. But I kind of found that trying to enjoy that while also thinking about your statement of intent created a big dissonance in my head. You're clearly attempting to say something, but you aren't trying to show it. And I, as a cartoonist, am critiquing the work of a cartoonist. You quoted Bushmiller sort of talking about the democratizing power of visual communication. You aren't attempting to communicate with imagery in your work. I find your approach to image making to be kind of lazy. Lazy image making is for prompters, not artists. I do believe, though, that you have the makings of an aesthetic. So instead of just shitting all over your work, I actually have some recommended reading for you. I think that these works will send you in a direction you really enjoy based on your work. I think Gary Panter's work would be very stimulating for you. I'm specifically thinking about Adventures in Paradise, Jimbo's Adventures in Paradise. He kind of is a character navigating a post-apocalyptic world. He is verbose, so there is writing involved. It's not just imagery. It's not something like Jim Woodring or something like that. And the images appear effortlessly drawn, but you can tell that there's been time and consideration put into the imagery. Secondly, if you're going to quote Bushmiller, not only should you be reading Nancy, I actually recommend the book How to Read Nancy. Ernie Bushmiller's work is incredibly legible, and this book is probably one of the most painstaking dissections of the comics medium that I've ever seen. You would really enjoy it and learn a lot. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, and then one last recommendation. I'm not going to flip through this one because not safe for YouTube. Read Dog Biscuits. Alex Graham, read this. Read Dog Biscuits by Alex Graham. You've got some recurring characters in your work. Characterization is probably one of the most exciting parts of storytelling. You clearly want to say something. You said that you want to make simple statements, but they often come out as complex. You're trying to say profound things. You will be able to do this better by telling specific stories about specific people. This is just a really great example of characterization and characters that you stick with for the majority of a pretty thick book. Yeah, you'll just like this a lot. You'll like the visual style. You'll like the characters. Thank you for submitting. I really look forward to keeping an eye on your work in the future. My last submission for this round comes from Brandon Pope.
My intent as an artist is to create the things that I would want to see as a viewer. When I see people connect with my art, it feels like they are connecting with me. The first thing here is a comic that I thought was funny. The next thing is a painting for the cover of issue 2 of my comic book series I'm working on. Piece 3 is a character from my sketchbook that I really liked and just wanted to do more stuff with.
Okay, Brandon, I love this work. This is sick. The way that the characters are rendered both in your like flat comic style and in your more like painterly style is very awesome. You're an extremely accomplished artist. Like, this is really cool to see. I want to see more though. You have these characters and they all sort of live on blank backgrounds. It's giving like Tumblr / Twitter OC culture. I want to see you render a whole world. I hope your sketchbooks have props in them and spaces and objects. However, I really love your characters. I do have one bone to pick though with the layout of this comic, and this is something that I see webcomics do a lot. Maybe this is just a problem with the freedom of webcomics, because I don't normally see this happen with print comics really at all. A lot of cartoonists, they lay their panels out in a way that disregards the format of the page. So if you have a 3-panel comic on a square format, it looks like this instead of this. If you have a 3-panel comic on a 4x5 format, it may look like this instead of this. Now, I don't want to make this argument with my whole chest. I don't know if I fully believe it. But Linda Berry, in Making Comics, talks about a 4-panel rhythm being kind of intrinsic to the medium of comics. I kind of agree that it's superior, but I'm not really willing to like fully admit that. It does feel a little arbitrary. Anyways, you're missing out on an opportunity to tell more of a story, whether that's by adding a 4th panel to make it even, or extending one of your panels and adding a little bit more storytelling information to the panel. Amazing work. Thanks so much for submitting. If you enjoyed this and would like to submit, you can send me an email, bootlegartschool@gmail.com. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted. Peace.